Good morning, campers, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 0.25. I've had a lot of difficulties with editing this, so this one's going to be kind of short, but we're going to get right into things. We are playing in hard mode, and already grabbed a couple of contracts here, so we're just going to fast forward through the building process. Since we're playing in hard mode, mostly going for a rocket that can just go up, hit a few contracts, and come straight back down, and survive the trip. So we're adding on these structural supports so that it can hopefully land without breaking the engine. That should get us some money back and keep us from spending too much in the early stages of the game here. Plus, I just really love the fast-forward music sound. That's great, isn't it? It's like... Anyway, alright. So yeah, finishing up the design and going straight into launch. You might notice I did forget something, and that's going to pop up here pretty darn quick. Jebediah in the capsule. Throttle to full, and ignition. And there goes the parachute, because I completely forgot to change the staging. Luckily, we recover from this pretty quickly. Flip the rocket over, get it right side up. Cut the parachute, and then we are right back to flying. Unfortunately, this now means we have no way to land, but we'll solve that problem later. So we've completed our first contract for just launching a rocket. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to make the altitude record on this particular trip. But as you can see, I do have two mods installed. One of those is Better Atmospheres, giving us some lovely clouds. I will link that in the video description. And we also have a Kerbal Alarm Clock is also installed, which is just... oh, it's my favorite mod. It's the one I can't play without. Anyway, we get to the top of our arc, and Jeb goes on EVA to repack the parachute. Starts to get a little bit away from the rocket, but his EVA pack's more than capable of handling that. Just going straight up and down, we don't want to wind up too far from the Space Center on this first journey. That would affect our bottom line a bit too much. Alright, chute is repacked, and we are back to falling, and back to 4 times speed. You'll notice I'm getting some phantom rolling motions here. That's part from the legs being slightly uneven, and it's also a little bit because I had a joystick plugged in that I did not notice was being pushed ever so slightly off to the side. But we managed to work through that for the trip back down. You probably heard a little bit of clicking there. I was trying to set the parachute off, wound up having to do it manually through the right-click menu. You also notice I completely forgot to do any science on this mission. I was so worried about Jeb getting back to the ground safe, I just completely left my mind. We have successful parachute deployment, and this is going to set down nice and gently on those support legs we've crafted onto the bottom of it. Now, since we forgot to do any of the science and we didn't really set the altitude record there, we're just going to go straight into another launch. And I promptly forgot to change the staging again, so this one's going to be just as exciting as the first one. We are going to grab a bit of science first. Jeb popping out to get some EVA information. This one not in 4x speed. This is going to be a nice short trip here. Throttle to full, and launching again. Launching again. Launching again. And promptly popping the parachute. This time, though, I've just had it. I don't want to risk losing the science data, and I know we're already not going to get to the altitude record, so I'm just going to let it land back on the launch pad. No harm, no foul. Unfortunately, I missed the launch pad, and as you can see, in excruciatingly slow motion, rocket tips right on over, straight onto the capsule, and we lose Jebediah. Now, we are playing on hard mode. Jeb is gone, unfortunately. That's our first Kerbal dead, and hopefully the only Kerbal we're going to lose anytime soon. I'm afraid he is gone for good. He is not going to be respawning in this version of the game. It also means we lost all the science on board, and we lost all the money for the rocket. Took a nice big hit for our reputation as well. Now that Bob is in charge of the... or I think that's Bill. Now that Bill and Bob are on their own without Jebediah to lead them, they're going to take a quick look around the Space Center and do some science before they really set off on any further adventures. They want to make sure they have much safer spacecraft than Jeb did. So he's going to do a little bit of exploring. We're not only in 4x speed from just the editing point of view, I also wind up taking the game up to 4x speed, so you get effectively 16 times time acceleration here when he's running around, because it took me forever to do this part. Running around getting some surface samples, EVA reports, that sort of thing from around the Space Center. Some things I learned on this one: the launch pad and the surrounding areas are all considered the same biome. However, once you get to the grass outside, that's a different biome. That's just the Kerbal Space Center. And then if you head for the buildings over there, each of the buildings is a separate biome. So you can get quite a lot of science if you're really, really thorough here. We're not going to be too terribly thorough. We're just going to unlock a couple of branches of the tech tree here. You see I'm still checking everything, trying to figure out which biomes are which. Get a little practice on flag planting right in the gravel pathway there. So that'll come in handy for the moon later, I think. And of course, between each one we have to run back to the ship because you can only hold so much data. Eventually I think I'm going to start leaving a car over here, something drone operated, so I can grab Kerbals and drive them around the Space Center pretty quickly. But of course we don't have that sort of information yet, so it's back and forth as we collect the science here. Unfortunately, no contracts being fulfilled on this one, but we're mostly just looking for science here. We want to unlock a few new parts. And you'll see pretty quickly here there's a biome for the vehicle assembly building, and then once you climb up onto the stairs here, there's a separate biome for the building itself. And I think there's probably also one for the smaller building next to it, but I didn't get the chance to check that. Once we get back to the capsule here, we're going to go ahead and recover, unlock some new parts, and try and build a better rocket. And there we go, recovered, everyone's safe, no more deaths. Here you'll see we're going through grabbing some contracts here. Our only real objective is to reach Kerbin orbit and break a couple altitude records, so we will see about those. Designing a new rocket here, making sure this one's capable of transmitting information back home just in case we get to orbit and can't quite come home. And we also now have separatrons, or not separatrons, decouplers. We're going to have a little crew module here, and we're going to put landing legs on it because we want as much of this rocket to come home as possible. And if you can get the entire upper stage back down in one piece, that'll save you a ton of money in the long run. And since we're using pretty small rockets here, that's more than enough for the parachute to handle on dropping it back into the atmosphere. And we're also going to put some nice, cheap, solid rocket boosters on this one. You want the parts that you drop back down that explode to be as cheap as possible, so the solid rocket boosters are a pretty good idea for your first stage early on in the game. Got our goo canisters have since been unlocked, so we're going to be taking a few of those up with us as we go. And as you can see, we are definitely checking on the staging here. Got an abort sequence plan just in case everything goes horribly, horribly wrong on the launch pad. That will fire the rocket on the upper stage and get, is that Bill or Bob? I think that's Bill, separate from the rocket and safe and sound. Anyway, we're into the launch. Still in the solid rocket phase, but as you can see, it's starting to go a little out of control. That's still the issue I mentioned earlier from the joystick. I did figure that out during this recording, so we will see my spacecraft come back under control pretty quickly. Second stage burning now, trying to get some good horizontal velocity up. And it's starting to look like we are definitely going to make orbit this time. Second stage just running out, and final stage has been lit. So we are certainly going to orbit today. Put our maneuver node up there, and then it's going to be nothing but science from here. And there's a quick cut there where I had some issues with my graphical settings, but that has been fixed. And we're going to start doing EVA reports here, mostly just grabbing science. We do have a contract up and running that lets us get some science data from space, bring that back and get a lot of money. We also have a, trying to remember what they call it, one of the, part of the economic boom update was you have the administrative center. You can enable different deals of sort that will change the way you play the game. I do believe we enabled one, I think either before this flight or just after this flight, that lets us get a bit more science and funds in place of our reputation. Since I can't quite figure out what reputation is used for just yet, I figured that's a pretty good expenditure of the reputation, though I think I didn't set that in motion until after this mission because I lost a whole bunch of reputation for killing Jeb that soon. Poor Jeb. I really do feel bad about that, but we have hired a bunch of new Kerbals, and you'll start seeing them starting next episode. No super unique names this time, I don't think. we're just going to grab some science here. A lot of EVA stuff on orbit. We want to make sure we get as much information as we can from this small spacecraft. And as you can see on the new nav ball here, one of the other updates they made is you now see all the different vector markers are on: normal, anti-normal, prograde, retrograde, and I don't know what the other two are actually called. Up and down, I guess. I'm not sure. Left and right, one of the two. But all now visible on your nav ball, so you can just do your maneuvers without having to worry about setting up a node if you know exactly what you need to do. Coming back around to the light side of the planet, still getting some more science here as we pass over the mountains. I do love the gold foil on the bottom of that engine. It just looks so good in the game. I wish they'd used the gold foil on more parts, but unfortunately you only really see that on that particular rocket engine, and then if you manage to break your lander later. One of those has a gold foil underside that you almost never see if you build it with anything below it. Going to pass over a desert here shortly. And grabbing our completed contracts, checking to see if there's anything else we can do while we're on orbit. We do see a Kerbal is stranded in space. That's going to come back later. We're going to take that up in the next episode, I believe. He will be our first named Kerbal to come back from space that we did not start with. Hopefully not last, but, you know, those are great ways to earn money. And here we are. We're going to go for a landing over a... we're going for the land, and this time we don't want to land on water since we've got all the science aboard. Since we do have the landing legs, we don't even need anything left in our engine, really. We just need to pop the parachute over dry land, and we should be able to land okay. Meanwhile, if this setup landed in the water, we'd lose the landing legs, the engine, probably the fuel tank as well, and we'd have to recover the science all separately. It would be just a huge mess. Much easier to just make sure you land over solid ground. Not in too much of a worry about exactly where we're coming down this time. I think we're still pretty far from the Space Center, but as long as you arrive intact, you get a lot of your money back. Entering the atmosphere now, so you start seeing the effects, and here they are. I think I actually wound up coming down pretty close to the Space Center from the looks of things. I'm recording the voiceover a couple days after I actually recorded this because I've had that much trouble with the editing here. So I think this should transition pretty quickly to a live commentary series rather than this post-commentary thing. But I did want to get these out of the way really quick. I didn't want y'all to be stuck watching me go through the early stages in 100% real-time speed. Once we get some really earnest missions going where we're leaving the sphere of influence of Kerbin entirely, we will be in live commentary mode a lot more in real time. And then time warping will be handled in the game, I think. Now, as you can probably tell from my Kerbal Space Program series so far, I do rather enjoy fast-forwarding in the editing stage. It just sounds so funny. Anyway, we're coming down nice and slowly now. Got the landing legs deployed. Should be touching down any moment. Any moment. You can also see I do have the terrain scatters on. You can see some trees in the background. That is not a mod, that is built into the game. You can find that under settings. And, oh, we bounced and fell over. But luckily, everything's intact. So let's go ahead and recover. And here you can see we are performing our duty and setting a important memorial for Jeb. Our legendary Kerbal. We are definitely going to miss him. This flag is going to remain here for the entirety of this save file. If we lose any other Kerbals, they will also get flags along this. This is on the track from the vehicle assembly building to the launch pad. Each Kerbal will get a little plaque saying how they died and what their mission was, if that was relevant. We're also going to put flags up for any Kerbals that wind up lost in space, though I am going to try and recover any that survive, that sort of thing. This is an unfortunate parachute accident. And that is where we're going to end this first episode. Thank you so much for watching.